If we get off at a stop and I ask you to stay together, that's important because Evan doesn't always pick us up where he drops us off. So if you wander, that means I got to go look for you. We only give you about 5 minutes because we have a tight schedule. So I don't want to have to leave anybody, okay? Whenever you're ready, Evan. So also have stops where I ask you to be back at a certain time. Again, we're on a tight schedule, so I want you guys to come back at the right time so that we don't have to cut something short. And if I have to cut something short, it's usually your lunch. So we don't want to have to do that, right? So there's water up here in the cooler for you as you get on and off the bus. If you want to leave things like backpacks or whatever, Evan does not leave the bus unattended, and you know, our stops are photo ops mostly. So we're going to be going, and not necessarily in this order because this is Washington. Stuff happens, motorcades and blockages. But the White House, the Capitol, World War II Memorial, Jefferson Memorial, FDR Memorial, Dr. King Memorial, Korean War Memorial, Lincoln Memorial, and the Vietnam Wall. And somewhere in there, I got to get you lunch. So you can see we got a whole lot of stuff to do and see today. But it's supposed to warm up, be a sunny, beautiful day. So you guys picked the right time to come. How many of you guys, this is your first time here? Oh, right. Evan, I can make stuff up.
There we go.
No, we can't do that because now people have Google, so kind of ruins it for me. We're going to be passing by Ford's Theater, and of course this is where President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. Booth, a very well-known actor here. He had easy access, people loved him, and he knew the play. It was a British comedy called My American Cousin, and he knew where the laughter was going to be. So we had a horse waiting for him in the alleyway. He walks up to the presidential booth, and when the laughter comes, he pulls back the curtain and shoots the president behind his ear. Now, they were there with the Stantons, and Major Stanton, of course, tries to grab Booth, and they get into a scuffle. Booth jumps off the balcony onto the stage, breaking his leg. But he manages to, excuse me, I have allergies. I'm not sick, guys. He manages to limp off the stage, get on his horse, and of course it takes them 12 days to finally catch up with him. When the president is shot, they actually bring him out and lay him in the street because they're not sure he's going to survive the buggy ride back to the White House because, of course, then the streets were cobblestone and they were afraid the jostling would kill him. So Mr. Peterson, who ran a boarding house across the street, came out and literally said, for goodness sakes, guys, bring him inside. And they had to lay him catty corner because of his height. And sadly, he never regained consciousness and died the next morning at 7:15. If you look over on the left, right behind this line of people, there's a red brick building with a gray bottom. That's the original Ford's Theater. It's still a working theater today. Across the street here, coming up on the right, red brick building with the green shutters, that's the Peterson House. You can actually do tours through both of these. They're absolutely fabulous. They have a little museum in the bottom of the Peterson House where you can follow the trail of John Wilkes Booth and some of the history of Abraham Lincoln. I just lost my train of thought. I lose my mind a lot, so if you find it, would you return it? Booth stops at Dr. Samuel Mudd's house down in southern Maryland. Now, he had met Mudd once at some social affair. He didn't really know him. And he told Mudd that he broke his leg falling off his horse. So Mudd sets his leg, and Booth goes off. Now, the authorities that are following Booth arrest Dr. Mudd, and he serves 3 years in prison as a co-conspirator. He finally gets out because they realize they made a mistake, and he wants to go back to being a doctor. But who wants to go to a doctor associated with the assassination of the president? So when you hear that old saying, your name is Mudd, that's where that came from. Over on the left, this is the J. Edgar Hoover FBI building. That is voted the ugliest building in the world by Architectural Digest. He said it looks like a giant waffle, doesn't it? It is ugly. Excuse me. It's been so warm here. Everything's blooming. Now the wind is blowing, so I apologize for the coffee. Over on the corner here, that white square, That's the original FDR memorial. When he was asked what kind of memorial you want, he said nothing bigger than this desk. That's what they gave him. The memorial we're going to walk through today to FDR is 7.5 acres. So he went from the smallest to one of the largest. This is our archives. In here you can see the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Bill of Rights, Emancipation Proclamation, and they have this whole section called the vaults, which literally gives the history of America. There are all sorts of documents, photographs. You can see Teddy Roosevelt on the campaign trail. You can actually hear some of FDR's fireside chats. And they have this one section that I love. It shows a lot of our presidents when they were children. Some of them are on video, like the Bushes and stuff. Do any of you guys know which president was a model and he was featured on the front of a lot of magazine covers? Take a guess.
Reagan.
Donald Trump.
No. It was actually Gerald Ford. Ford was a hottie, and he was also a football star from Michigan. And so he was featured on a whole bunch of magazines. He's also the only president never to be voted into office. Coming up on your right, Federal Trade Commission. These are the guys that oversee fair trade practices. They'll put you on the no-call list, which doesn't mean anything. You'll have a new friend named Spam. There's a statue up here that represents man pulling in the reins of monopoly and trade. Look carefully at that, because Evan was the model for that.
Many years ago.
It's just like it, doesn't it? Our first stop's going to be the Capitol, but we're passing the west wing of the National Gallery of Art there on the right. This is where our masters are located. We have a Leonardo da Vinci, French, Italian, Dutch masters, and it's connected with an underground tunnel to the east wing, which is coming up, and this is where our contemporary artwork is located. Now, back in the day when President Garfield was in office, this was a train station. This is where he was shot by Charles Guiteau. Guiteau is this nutcase. He thinks he should be appointed to a position in the White House, keeps knocking on the door. Of course, they know he's crazy. And so he follows the president down here when he's waiting for a train and shoots him in the back. But he doesn't die from that bullet. For 11 weeks, the doctors try to find that bullet. They poke, they prod, then they get desperate, and they use this new invention called a metal detector. And they put it over his back and it pings and they poke. No bullet. Then they put it over here, it pings and they prod. No bullet. And then they realize it's pinging because he's laying on a bed with metal springs. And he dies 11.5 weeks later of infection. If the doctors had left him alone, he probably would have survived. He served less than 200 days in office. He was brilliant. He had a photographic memory. He had served in the House for a couple decades. Who knows what he would have done when he was president. So we're going to be coming up on the west side of the Capitol. This is where we swear our presidents in. We didn't always swear them in on this side. Up until Ronald Reagan, we swore them in on the east side. But the east side is way smaller. And we knew when Reagan was coming into office, we were going to have a really big crowd. So we switched from the east to the west. And of course, he used that to his advantage. He told his constituents he did it so he could face California. Worked pretty good for him. Let me see. All right, I can tell you right now the House and the Senate are not in session. How do I know that? Well, it's Saturday, but anyway, they do sometimes work on Saturday. The Senate's going to be on the left and the House on the right. Above those houses are very large flagpoles. When we first opened the Capitol, that was how we signaled our senators, congressmen, their pages if they weren't there, and the public that they were in there working. So out of tradition, we still do that today. On top of the Capitol, you'll see the most important statue in America, more important than liberty. Her name is Freedom. Freedom is the tallest point downtown, other than the Washington Monument, which was grandfathered in. And we don't allow skyscrapers or anything to be taller than our freedom or above our freedom. She also faces east, so the sun will never set on freedom. Her headdress is a bald eagle, and she's actually holding a sword and a shield with the stars of the American flag. Now the Capitol is reopened for tours. Check the schedule. They're not open on Sundays and sometimes on Saturdays. Again, you have to check the schedule. But you go in on the other side and they have this amazing new museum there. Plus the tours, they're free. You just have to show up. So Senate left, House right, and we're gonna get off up here and walk across so you guys can get some good pictures. They're cleaning. That's what that drop cloth is for. In the center of the circle coming up here on the left, that is the statue of James Garfield. Those three allegoric figures on the bottom represent him as a soldier, a statesman, and a scholar. Thank you, Evan. Yes, please. You guys need a water? There's cold ones in the cooler, or there's some up here. Find my cough drops. Alrighty. Watch.